Okay. So in the last session, we tested up to prepayment invoice. In today's session, we'll see a concept called as withholding tax. Okay. A concept called as withholding tax. So what does it mean by withholding tax? Say you purchase it from one supplier for 10,000 and you will receive some material or it may be related to services and you have to pay $10,000. If any tax is applicable on that, you'll include the tax and you will pay that amount. So a 10% tax, the item cost is 10,000, 10% tax, 1,000, total 11,000 you have to pay. That is one case where we are paying the tax amount to supplier. Our supplier will pay to the government. Whatever the tax amount our supplier is collecting from us, our supplier will be liable to pay to the government. You are paying to supplier. Say here supplier is organization, registered entity. If you are paying some tax amount to non-registered entity, they may not take the responsibility of paying the tax to the government. In those scenarios, what we can do is, say you have invoice from your supplier for $10,000 and 10% tax is applicable on that, but your supplier is not registered entity. In that case, if you pay the tax amount, there is no guarantee your supplier will pay to the tax authority. In those scenarios, what we can do is, you can deduct the tax amount. If you take example, total amount is 10,000 including the tax. Say 9,000 is item cost and 1,000 is tax amount. Total you got invoice for 10,000. So if you pay the tax amount to the supplier who is not registered entity, they may not pay to the government. So that is the reason what you can do is, you can hold the tax amount. 9,000 you can pay to the supplier, the 1,000 tax amount you can hold, that you can take the responsibility of paying the tax to the government. So what are the $1,000 you are holding as a tax amount to pay to the government instead of paying to the supplier? That you can call as withholding tax. Take example of TDS. Okay, when you are working for any company as an organization, they deduct the TDS. Why they are deducting the TDS? Why they are not paying to the employees? Employees are not registered entities. As an organization, if they pay TDS amount to employees, there is no guarantee employees will take the responsibility of paying the TDS tax amount to the government. That is the reason organization deduct the TDS and the staff amount only they will pay as a salary. The same way, when we are making the payments to any supplier, maybe contractor, maybe rent amounts, wherever some individuals are involved, when we are making the payments, you have to hold the tax amount and you have to pay the remaining amount. So very simple. Withholding tax means when we are making the payments to the suppliers, we hold the tax amount and we pay the remaining amount that we can manage with the withholding tax concept. Withholding, when withholding tax is applicable on any invoice, that means how it would be applicable on invoice, for which suppliers withholding tax is applicable, we do the setups. Okay, for which suppliers withholding tax is applicable, that we can set up in the system. When you create invoice against any supplier, if withholding tax is applicable, automatically system will calculate the withholding tax. Automatically system would calculate withholding tax. The tax amount will hold, remaining amount will pay to the supplier. The tax amount we have to pay to the tax authority. Okay, we have to pay to the tax authority. Let's see what setups we have to do, how we can just execute this process, we'll see in the system. First, to implement withholding tax. That means when you create invoice against a supplier where withholding tax is applicable. Okay, if to calculate that, what setups are required, then we'll see how to create invoice and how system will calculate withholding tax with the withholding tax amount, how system would create withholding tax invoice, and how we can pay remaining amount to our standard supplier, how we can pay the tax amount to tax authority. We'll go through all these points. Your simple point is, when we are going to make the payment to supplier, we want to hold the tax amount, remaining amount only we want to pay to the supplier, and tax amount we want to pay to tax authority that we want to take as a responsibility. So this is the point we have to understand. What are the tax amount we are going to hold that we have to pay to tax authority? If you want to make the payment to tax authority or to anyone, we have to create that party as a supplier in the system. So now first what we have to do is we have to create tax authority as a supplier. Tax authority as supplier. So if you create tax authority as supplier, what are the amounts we are going to deduct, hold that we can pay to the tax authority? Then we have to set up withholding tax options. So set up withholding. We'll see what does it mean by withholding options and all. Now just take the point as a part of setups. Say set up withholding tax option. How to set, what information we can set within that, we'll see. And we have to create the withholding tax codes. How much percentage of tax we want to calculate as a withholding tax, that we have to set up. Say create withholding tax codes. In our this testing, what we can do is let's calculate 10% tax. Okay, we'll create one tax code with the 10%. Then we have to create withholding tax group. Group is the purpose is one or multiple tax codes you can group. Okay, you have to group. Without grouping the tax codes, the tax codes you cannot assign to supplier. Whatever the tax codes you are creating, those we have to assign to the supplier. If you want to assign the tax codes to supplier, you have to group them. Say you have only one tax code, still you have to group. You have to create the tax group. Directly you cannot assign the tax code to suppliers. With the concept called as group only you can assign. That is the reason we have to create the withholding tax group. Say create a withholding tax group. The tax group you can call as a classification also. Okay. Create withholding tax group or call it as a classification. And finally, this tax group or classification, both are same. Tax group or tax classification, both are same. You can assign this tax group to supplier. Which suppliers withholding tax is applicable to, those suppliers we have to assign this tax group. Say assign withholding tax group WHT, withholding tax. Assign withholding tax group to supplier. You can call it assign withholding tax group or assign withholding tax classification to supplier. Both are same. So these are the setups we have to do. Once we are ready with these setups, what we'll do is we'll go and create the standard invoice. Create the standard invoice. Okay, we'll go and create the standard invoice maybe with $10,000 or 1 lakh, any amount. We'll go and create the without standard invoice with the 1 lakh. When system will calculate, that we can set. Let's say when system would when we validate the invoice, system has to calculate the withholding tax. So right here you can say validate. We have to create the standard invoice and we have to validate. When we validate, system will calculate the withholding tax. Here how much amount we are taking? 10,000. Okay. From this, it has to deduct, say tax amount is 10,000, 10%. So it has to calculate 10% means 1,000. It should reduce 1,000 from this. So that means whenever you submit the invoice for validation from 10,000, it will calculate 1,000 and it will reduce that 1,000. and this 9,000 only would be liable in the standard invoice. This 9,000 we can pay to standard supplier, against which supplier you are creating invoice, you have to pay to that supplier. The remaining 1,000, this tax amount we have to pay to tax authority. Okay, with this $1,000, system will create withholding tax invoice. Say system creates withholding tax invoice with tax amount. How much is the tax amount? $1,000. So this is what we can implement as withholding tax in the system. First, we'll go and see the setups. What setups we have to complete. After completing the setups, we will see the process, how system would calculate, how it will create withholding tax invoice, how we can pay to the tax authority. Okay, all those we can see. System creates withholding tax invoice with that withholding tax amount. This we can pay to tax authority. This 9,000 we will pay to standard supplier. Total we are paying 10,000, not to supplier. 9,000 to original supplier, 1,000 to tax authority. Okay, we'll see in the system so that we can understand. Right. First, we have to create tax authority as supplier. We know how to create the supplier. The same process, only one additional point you have to understand how system will understand that supplier as a tax authority. That's all. Okay. So go to supplier creation page. Go to navigator. Tools. Sorry. Procurement. Right. Procurement. Suppliers. Go to task list. Create supplier. The supplier name is, you can give withholding tax. Okay, US tax authority. As a suffix, we will take as affix just for our identification purpose. There may be other suppliers like withholding tax, US tax authority, etc. So to identify our supplier, we can give suffix as affix. And business relationship, you can select spend authorized. Tax organization type, you can select any value, the government agency, corporation, etc. etc. Anything you can select. It doesn't have any functionality, just for identification purpose. Now just click on create. Now system will create supplier profile, right? Now how system can understand this supplier is different from normal supplier? So for system understanding, here we have to give the supplier type as a tax authority. That is very important. When you give supplier type as a tax authority, this supplier will be available in withholding tax related setups so that we can do the mapping. So select supplier type as a tax authority. That's very, very important. Otherwise, you cannot use this supplier in the withholding tax process. Select supplier type as a tax authority. The value what we are selecting, based on that system will start behaving. Okay, done. You should select supplier type as a tax authority, otherwise no use of this supplier creation. Now go to addresses, create address. Just click on create. You can give the name as withholding tax. Yep, Amex withholding tax as the address. Select country. This address belongs to which country? Country code. Select. Say okay. Please go on mute. Okay. So select postal code. You can pick any one of the postal code. And what purpose? Are we going to place any order to this tax authority? No. Only for payment. Whenever we have to pay the tax amount, For that purpose, we are going to use this address. Then you can select as only remit to. We never place orders. Whatever the tax amount we are deducting from the supplier invoices that we have to pay, for that purpose we are going to use this address, and against this address whatever the site we create, that also we use for the same purpose. Just select only remit to. Say save and close. That we created address. Now create site. Go to sites. Click on create. Select address. And site name you can take as withholding tax. So system is defaulting the remit to as a pay here. Now you can click on save and go to invoicing tab. Set invoice currency to payment currency. When system would create withholding tax invoice against the supplier site with the tax amount, what currency system has to use for that invoice creation, that we have to set. Same way, go to payments tab, set any one of the currency as a default. Set any one of the currency as a default. I am selecting check as a default currency. Select check and click on default. Okay. And go to site assignments. And just you can click on add, or else you can say auto create assignment, so that this site will be assigned to the business units for which business units current user is acting as a procurement agent. Just click on auto create assignments. Assigned. I'll say save and close. That's all. Click on submit. There is no difference if you compare with supplier creation, whatever already we done. Only the difference is supplier type selection. That's very important. Okay, that is very, very important. So that's how we have to create tax authority as a supplier. The next step is set up withholding tax options. Go to our implementation project. Manage implementation projects. Overview. Open the project. Okay. Go to withholding tax options. Type just withholding tax. So this is a task. Manage tax reporting under withholding tax options that we are setting for our business unit only. Click on go to task icon. And here just simply you have to specify when system has to calculate the withholding tax. Select event class is nothing but invoice type. Select standard invoice. By default for our business unit, automatically system selected withholding tax applicability and everything. Okay. And when system has to calculate the withholding tax at the time of invoice creation, when system has to create the withholding tax invoice creation time. That means validation time. So here you can select the date and click on save and close. Okay, just click on save and close. Done. So we created withholding tax options. Then what we did, we selected the withholding tax applicability for standard invoice, and at what point of time system has to calculate the withholding tax. Invoice creation, okay, calculation as well as withholding tax creation at invoice only. Invoice means validation time. And we given the start date, that's all. You don't need to set anything here. Now the next setup is we have to create withholding tax code. With how much percentage system has to calculate the withholding tax, that we have to set up. Search for withholding tax codes. So tax codes, manage tax codes. Click on go to task icon. Say create. So we are going to create withholding tax codes to calculate the tax in which business unit. Select that BU. BU is Amex US business unit. And select country, the tax which we are going to calculate for which country. US. Tax regime code. Okay. Within US, we are going to calculate the tax in which regime. That may be regime can be state or city or county that you have to create. Just it's all about giving the name. Click on drop down, say create. You can give the name as Amex withholding tax. Okay, regime. The same you can take as a name also. Some name you have to provide for identification. You can give today date and start date, say save and close. Now create the tax name. Say create. So tax name is say withholding tax at the rate of 10%. Just name I'm giving with a percentage also. Start date is today's date. Here you can select withholding tax account. When we calculate the tax, the amount should hit to which account? Withholding tax account. Select withholding tax account. Okay, select withholding tax. Say okay. Now, if you calculate 10% withholding tax, that should be paid to whom? That tax authority we have to select here. When we create supplier, we selected type as a tax authority. Because of that reason, you can find that supplier here. So here we given the name as withholding tax US tax authority Amex. Select site also. Now with this tax code, if you calculate any tax, system will create the withholding tax invoice with this tax authority. That's all. Say save and close. Here we are linking the tax code with the tax authority. How we are getting tax authority here? At the time of the tax authority creation as a supplier, we selected supplier type as a tax authority. That is the reason it is getting displayed in this field. Otherwise, you don't find here. Just wait for a second. Yeah. The same name you can give as a code also. Now, if you want to convert this withholding tax code as a withholding tax group, you can enable the checkbox. Create tax classification code is nothing but system will convert this tax code as a group also. Group only we can assign to supplier. No need to enable the checkbox. We'll create through manual process so that we can understand. Okay, don't enable this. Now set 10% rate here. Rate periods. Click on add. Set percentage. Set effective start date. You can say save and close. This is how you may create multiple tax codes if required. This is all you can group by using the withholding tax group or withholding tax classification. We created withholding tax code with 10% tax. Now we'll create withholding tax classification or call it as a group. Just click on done. Here is the task. Manage withholding tax classifications. Click on go to task icon. Say create. We can name it as Amex withholding tax group. Provide start date. And here you can add that tax whatever we created. Click on add. Just 1 second. Great. So select our business unit. Amex US business unit and select tax code. We created only one. The same you can select. Say save and close. If you have one more, you can add here. We created only one tax code. The same we selected. This is what we call as withholding tax group. The name wise you can see as a classification, but you can say that is a group. Now this withholding tax group is applicable for which supplier we have to assign to that supplier. Okay, assign withholding tax group to supplier. Go to our supplier definition page. Suppliers. Go to task list and say manage suppliers. Supplier name. Amex supplier 1. Search. Click on edit. Now we are at supplier profile. Under profile, go to tab called as income tax. Okay. Here enable checkbox called as use withholding tax and select withholding tax group. The classification or group both are same. We given name as Amex withholding tax group. Select it. Now go to sites, click on edit, go to site assignments. Now here also you have to enable the same checkbox, use withholding tax and select withholding tax group. If you don't enable at profile level, site level, you cannot enable. That is the reason first we have to enable and select over there, and system will allow us to enable and select here. Without enabling at profile level, site level, you cannot enable. Now we are applying this withholding tax for this supplier site. If you create any invoice with the site 1 for Amex supplier 1, withholding tax is applicable. How much percentage that is there in this withholding tax group? We have only one code, that is 10%. That's all. So we are applying withholding tax for this supplier and this site. Say submit. So these are the setups we completed. Now we'll go and create the standard invoice. The moment you submit for validation, system will calculate the tax, and with the tax amount it will create withholding tax invoice. And within the standard invoice you can see only 9,000 as a due amount.
Lakshman, can you explain those steps with the meaning of those steps? The code and options and classifications, I just missed them.
You missed up. No, you attended or you just joined late?
I attended, but I just missed the 2-3 definitions of the headings.
Tell me what is your doubt. I'll explain.
What is the setup withholding tax options and creating the groups and code, tax code?
See, tax authority as supplier whom we have to pay the tax. For that we have to create the tax authority. Withholding tax options means what we've seen, for which type of invoices withholding tax is applicable, at what point of time we have to calculate the tax, at what point of time system has to create the withholding tax invoice. What we selected by default is there as invoice. That means invoice creation time system has to calculate the withholding tax. At invoice creation time only system has to create withholding tax invoice. That's what we have said, the withholding tax options. Tax code is nothing but how much percentage of tax need to be calculated. How much percentage tax system.
Both are not given.
That is the code.
Both are not given in the same task. It is separate and this is separate.
Yeah, that's
how
what
much it
right?
has to calculate it is given.
These two are separate. What is your doubt here?
In the tax code, what are the options we are giving so that it relate to the supplier?
Yeah, this tax code, it's not related to supplier. We are creating the tax code and we are connecting this tax code to tax authority. Related to supplier, here we are doing. We are assigning. Against the tax code, we are creating the group. The group we are assigning to supplier.
Okay. Tax group means it contains all the
one or
taxes which are.
Okay, tax group is nothing but grouping tax codes. You may group multiple tax codes, or else even if you have one tax code also you have to group it. Why we are grouping? Directly we cannot assign the tax code to supplier. That is the reason we have to group.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all. So to whom we have to pay tax, we are creating as a tax authority, and for which invoice types and when system has to calculate the tax and it has to create withholding tax invoice, we are setting in the tax options. How much percentage of tax need to be calculated, that we are setting by using the withholding tax code, and which tax codes you want to assign to supplier, those you have to group by using the tax group, And finally, the same withholding tax group you are assigning to supplier. Which is supplier, the tax codes are applicable. Tax is applicable, accordingly we are assigning the groups. Finally, we create invoice and we validate. And we validate, system will calculate the tax, which is supplier's withholding tax is already applicable. Against that supplier invoices, it will calculate the tax. That's all.
Yeah, good morning, Mr. Lakshman. One doubt. When you're creating a group and assigning the multiple codes, tax codes, so which one will be applicable to a supplier when the invoice is generated?
All, how many are there? All will be applied.
Only one supposed to be used for the invoice, right? Against supplier?
That is true. That is true. That's what we did. Sometimes maybe more than one. In that case, you can group those two that you can assign to supplier. With the two tax codes, system will calculate the tax. Maybe one tax code is 10%, other tax code may be 2%. Okay. With
It means while generating the invoice, we choose one of them.
10%, it will calculate, and the 2% means with the 2% on that same tax, how much it will calculate. How we require, you can set. If it's only one, take only one into group. If it is more than one, group more than one tax codes what we have. That group we have to assign to supplier. Within the tax group, we have, if you have only one code, accordingly it will calculate. If you have more than one, yes, the same system will apply.
It means like we need to choose it manually, one of the available codes in the group.
No. Where you are expecting to choose?
Let us say you have multiple codes. One is for the 10%, one is for the 5%. Let us say example.
First, you will create 10 and 5%. Two tax codes you created. What is your question?
Yeah, assigned to a group.
Sorry?
So both are available in a group, one group, and that group is assigned to.
If you select, both will be available. See, you created one with the 10 and one with 5. Now you are creating tax group. Okay.
Yeah, with both the codes.
Only one, or you can select two.
Yeah, now selecting both. So creating a tax group. Okay, that tax group is assigned to a supplier, right?
Yeah, I got your question. You cannot choose. After assigning, automatically system will calculate. You assign one tax group, within that you have two tax codes. When you create invoice, automatically system will calculate the tax with those two tax codes which are in the same group. You cannot choose. That's it.
Then which one is applicable?
Both will be applicable. Okay. Both will be applicable. See, 10%, 5%. You have 10,000 invoice. With the 10%, it will calculate 1,000. With the 5%, it will calculate 500. Total 1,500 tax. So 8,000.
Oh, I see. Oh, okay. That is how you are. Okay.
Yeah.
It means, most of the cases we need to go. Oh, okay. So it means most of the cases we'll go with a single code.
Yeah, generally it would be single code only. Wherever it is applicable more than one, then you can group those.
Okay, one more doubt. When you are choosing the options, you selected the income tax. Is it not the sales tax, or in ES both are same?
Nothing, just the task name they given like that. That's all. Okay, see, similar to income tax, right? Income, like you will get income. Okay, you are individual. You get income, right?
Yes.
When you are paying, you say you are an employee. Organization is paying you that some amount, or else you are a owner for one building. You are getting some rent amount. That is income for you. So when somebody is paying some rent amount to you, the TDS is applicable, which is equal to withholding tax. That is the reason the naming convention they are given as income tax.
Okay. But in India, we have separate
tax is applicable. That is the reason the term name they are given as income. That's all. You just see as a withholding tax.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi Lakshman, this is Satish.
Please.
For different types of goods, there is a different type of tax rates, right? For
that's
how can
no, 1 second. That is totally different. Goods and all, that is a localization. Country-specific taxation and all, that is totally different. It is a standard functionality irrespective of country Oracle is giving, where If this sort of scenario is applicable, you can use. If you take US, different taxation. If you take India, different taxation. If you take UAE, different taxation. That is a different. That we call as localization. Now we are not talking about localization, just the standard functionality, what they are giving as a part of product, irrespective of country. That's what we are discussing. That is a localization. Okay. So they will go with the different conditions, rules. Okay.
Okay.
So based on bill to, ship to, and based on product or categories,
Yeah.
that's a lot many. Yeah. This
Okay.
is direct functionality irrespective of country. If you want to hold some tax amount when you are making the payments, to whom it is applicable, accordingly you can create the group and you can apply. And you create invoices.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
We'll go and see this. Okay, we'll create standard invoice and we'll see how system would calculate. Let's navigate to invoice creation page, payables, invoices. Go to task list. So create invoice. Supplier is Amex. So 0001 invoice number. Say $10,000. Enter 10,000. Now to the supplier site level, we assign withholding tax group. Because of that, system will calculate withholding tax. When it would calculate, the moment you submit this invoice for validation. So validate. Submit this invoice for validation. It will identify withholding tax is applicable for the supplier site and it will calculate and it will reduce the same amount from $10,000 and it will display we have to pay only 9,000 to this Amex supplier one. Remaining 1,000 we have to pay to the tax authority. With the same $1,000, it will create withholding tax invoice also. Scroll little down, you can see. See here, you can see the information. Total amount is 10,000, but due amount is only 9,000. Why? System calculated withholding tax 1,000, 10%, 1,000. Now, if you try to pay, you can pay only 9,000. Already system created withholding tax invoice. First, we'll go and see that. Or else you can pay and you can go and see. Let's try to make the payment. We'll allow to pay only 9,000. 1,000 already system created withholding tax invoice. Just now. Let's see how much you can pay, only 9. This 9,000 you can pay to your standard supplier. Payment document. With 1,000 you can find the invoice with the tax authority. Done. Paid. Now we can find the withholding tax invoice. You no need to pay to find withholding tax invoice. Ideally, you can find withholding. So here you can click on complete. It is not showing. We'll go and search with the supplier name and you can find. Go to manage invoices. Select our business unit. Okay, supplier name. Withholding tax, US tax authority, Amex, right? search. Okay, withholding tax, US tax authority, MX. So with this supplier, if any withholding tax invoice is created, it will display. Click on search. There should be invoice with $1,000. You can see here. Site is withholding tax. Supplier is withholding US tax authority. This is the withholding tax invoice number. Click on withholding tax invoice number. Okay. Invoice type is withholding tax. So invoice date. Okay. And this is a supplier name. Withholding tax, US tax authority, MX. Site is withholding tax. This is the address. Okay. You can see all the details. This is a withholding tax invoice number. Complete information. You can click on edit. It will show as the actual invoice format. Yeah. This is the BU. This is supplier, site, legal entity. Invoice, withholding tax invoice number. Before you proceed, before you validate, if you want to edit, you can edit number, because we don't get any number from tax authority. We have to take initiative to create it. Now here you can see the description. This withholding tax invoice is created against invoice number 0001. Supplier is Amex supplier 1. Okay, against Amex supplier 1, invoice number 0001. This withholding tax invoice is created. Okay, here also you can see the same description. Withholding tax Amex supplier 1 0001. Now you can submit for validation. That's validated. So now you may make the payment. Okay, you can pay to only tax authority. You want to pay, you can pay, or else if you have some payment terms different, say for a tax authority you pay every monthly once or quarterly once. How you want to pay, how you pay, accordingly you can pay. Now just for our testing purpose, you can say pay in full. 9,000 we pay to standard supplier, 1,000 we are paying to tax authority. Submit. Say okay. Done. So that's all about withholding tax. Okay.
Okay. Lakshman, I have a question here.
1 second, when I'm speaking, please don't mind. So these are the setups you have to remember. To implement withholding tax, these setups are required. And process-wise, create withholding tax invoice and validate. Create standard invoice and validate. Then system will calculate withholding tax and it will create withholding tax invoice against tax authority. This is what you have to understand. Yeah, please.
Thanks, Lakshman. So my question is, while creating the invoice, the system automatically calculated the withholding tax 10%.
No.
As we
while creating not, when you submit the invoice for validation, that is the trigger point. Okay.
Yes, Lakshman. Sorry, I missed that point.
If you submit for validation, it will calculate.
Yes. So is there any option to select it manually?
Manual in the sense, no. It is not a manual action. So here in the invoice options, you can set at what point of time. We selected at the time of invoice. If not invoice, you can select at payment creation. So it can be invoice creation or payment creation. It should happen automatically. There is no manual option where you can go and hit to calculate.
Okay. So my question is, for example, the vendor, I'm receiving invoices from Dell vendor, which is with 10% tax. Later point of after a year, so Dell vendor, what he did, he got a lower income tax certificate from the central government.
Okay.
stating that I want.
I got your point. I got your point. What you can do is, in that scenario, manually you can create withholding tax invoice. The action during that creation process, you cannot do anything. If it is applicable, it will apply. You don't want to apply. You want to create withholding tax invoice through manual process. So here you can find the invoice type called as withholding tax. By selecting this, you can enter, okay, which authority and all. Manually, you have to enter all those details. You can use the invoice type as withholding tax and you can enter the tax amount. But during the invoice creation, you don't have manual option. If it is applicable, it will calculate. That's all. If you want to create separate manual withholding tax invoice, you can. So in that case, you don't enable withholding tax for that supplier so that it won't calculate. What we did, we assigned withholding tax group and we enable withholding tax to that supplier. Don't do that. And here you can enter through manual process, but it is not recommended. But if you have business scenario, yes, you can enter through manual process by selecting the invoice type as a withholding tax.
Okay. Apologies. Maybe I'm missing somewhere, but the thing is, I'm working into accounts payable. So whereas I work on the India invoice processing. Okay. So when I work on the invoices, I could receive multiple withholding tax invoices. In that case, I used to select the tax code as per the amounts. So system automatically calculating the taxes. So based on that, just I'm requesting. So how can we do that? We are doing manually selecting the tax codes there.
Where?
And the can you create one invoice so that I can tell you?
Oh, no. If you have India localization, then only you will get all those options. Here directly you don't get anything.
Okay, so that's what I'm missing somewhere. That's what my question there.
Means you might be selecting at line level, right?
No, tax level only. Tax level only.
The actions.
No. In the taxes, can you come down a little there? Bottom of the lines, we find the taxes, right?
1 second.
Okay.
You are referring here.
Absolutely. And coming to withholding taxes. Come to withholding taxes, yes. Yeah. Edit taxes.
You are selecting withholding tax code here.
Yes. No. Yes. Yes.
Not applicable.
That will be yes. Now, in general, we get, that is enabled in our system, so that we'll add the tax lines as per the invoice copy. And sometimes what we do, if we receive multiple, like 2 to 3 invoice codes as per the lower income tax code, in manage tax details, we will select as per the line. So just wanted to check with you how we do that.
You can do that. To select this, you can set it, create manual withholding tax. The check boxes you can enable, then system will allow. But the current configuration what we did, it will default. It won't allow you to choose anything.
Okay.
That's how it works. You are talking about specific country localization. So
yes.
That's you will be able to, because when it comes to localization, there will be some additional patches Oracle will provide. So that all will support for the relevant scenarios. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks. So that's all about withholding tax. What we have to understand with respect to country localization, country specific taxation. It's just standard functionality which we have to understand how it works. Just remember the setups and process. Now we'll see the concept called as bills payable.
Mr. Lakshman, one more question on withholding tax.
Yep.
Yeah, while calculating the withholding tax, system has already done as per the setup.
Correct.
It has created an invoice on the withholding tax authority already created.
Correct.
What is the need for us to validate it again?
How you can pay?
Normally it should come as a validated one because system has already created. You cannot change the amount also there once the invoice is created.
Yeah, you asked a question, let me answer. Say, you system created. Say you want to change the invoice number. If it is validated, you cannot change it. So that is the reason it is giving the open option. You see, you have seen very long number for withholding tax invoice, right? Withholding tax in 10 digits some number and something there is the withholding tax number, invoice number. So that sort of fields you may want to change. Few other details also you may want to change for display purpose. You create a description, but you want to include something in the description, etc. So certain fields which are editable, which doesn't impact whatever system calculated, those you may want to update. That is the reason Oracle is giving the flexibility. You can update and you can validate. That means you are not changing the amounts, you are not changing the supplier, you are not changing something, which is a very key.
Okay.
That's it. Yeah.
Okay, I understand this. But if I am right, it was not there. This validation, the requirement was not there in release 12.
It is there. In EBS also you have to validate.
EBS?
Yes, in EBS.
Okay. Okay, let me check it up again. One thing.
Yeah.
Another thing, when we cancel the original, when we cancel the original invoice, will the invoice created for the tax authority also will be cancelled automatically?
Yes.
Okay, that's right. Thank you.
Functionality wise, no difference. They didn't make any difference functionality wise. If you compare with EBS, there is no difference.
Okay.
It is there as is. It's just the naming convention. The tax groups they are calling as a tax classification codes. Okay. In case of EBS, here is set up. Here we are doing the withholding tax options. How do you set up withholding tax option in EBS? Do you remember?
Same way, na? Same way we do it.
No. In the payables options, you will find one tab called as withholding tax. Under that, you have to set all those options. There won't be separate tax options. Okay. Here they given some.
Yeah, correct.
In EBS,
correct. Payable.
The payable options they given one tab. Under the tab, you have to set this. And again, here,
so now here we are doing withholding tax option.
Slight difference also. Okay. Then first we have to enable withholding tax. First we have to enable that. Then it will open the options. Then you can select all those. Yeah.
Yeah.
Here it is very simple.
Oh, here they did it as a withholding tax option itself.
Sorry?
Here they did it in the withholding tax option.
Yeah.
A separate option.
Separate task for that.
For payable.
Correct. Compared to that, this is very simple. Setting up.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks. So let's talk about bills payable. What does it mean by bills payable? Bills payable is nothing but future dated payments. Okay, this you can call as future dated payments, or say PDC, post dated checks. Say you want to pay to your supplier today, but you don't have funds in your bank account. You are issuing the check today by writing future date on the check, so that you can treat like you paid, but as per the date what you mentioned on the check, supplier can encash it. So how that can be managed in the system, we'll go to see. Okay. So this will just see what setups we have to do first. So when you make the payment, okay, when you make the payment, system will create accounting differently. So we'll see. First we'll talk about setups, then we'll talk about process, then how this in bills payables, how that accounting takes place, we'll discuss. Okay. So what we have to do is we have to provide bills payable account in common options. Okay. When you make future dated payments, okay, when you make future dated payments, system will look for bills payable account. That account should be available in the common option so that it will pick and it will create accounting according. And for this bills payables purpose, we have to create separate payment method. We create payment method for bills payable. That's all. And what we'll do is, as a process, create standard invoice, process payment with the future date, and we have to run one process. Why we have to run and all we'll discuss. So you can run one process called as update. It will be like matured. Okay, update matured bills payable or bills payable status. Say update matured bills payable status. This is how you can find one job. You have to run this. So now we'll discuss on this point. Now let's take the very general case. Very general case. Say you created invoice. Okay, you created invoice. Invoice creation. We'll see the accounting. Invoice. For invoice, account is expense account is debit. Liability account is credit. When you process the payment, when you make the payment, no liability. So liability should be debited. Liability debit. And when you make the payment, it will be pending for reconciliation. That means it will be pending for clearing. You have to say cash clearing credit. Say when you create invoice, you spend some expense and we have to pay. Once we paid, no more liability. That is the reason we are debiting. Here it is the liability credited. Here it is debiting means knocked off. No liability. Crediting cash clearing. That means we paid. It is pending for clearing. Once you do the reconciliation, we'll see as a part of cash management, we'll see how to do the reconciliation. Once you do the reconciliation, that means the check got cleared. Then no, it is not, no more it is pending for clearing. So cash clearing account is debit, and cash account is credit. This is accounting. Okay. When you create invoice, this is accounting. When you make the payment, liability debit and cash clearing. That means no liability. We paid, it is pending for clearing. We paid, it is pending for clearing. Once reconciled, that means it is cleared also. It is no more pending for clearing, paid cash. Here, if you see this, liability cancelled. In the invoice creation, liability is credited and payment creation, liability debited. These two are knocked off. Payment time, cash clearing is credited. That means it is pending for clearing. Once you do the reconciliations, that once you do the clearing, it will do the reconciliation. So here, cash clearing is credited, cash clearing is debited. This is also cancelled, knocked off. So liability knocked off, cash clearing is knocked off. Here, what is the final entry? We spent expense and we paid. That's all. This is the final entry as per these transactions. Now it's a very general scenario. If you go with bills payables, how the accounting would be? Bills payables. Invoice accounting is same. You create an invoice. This is the accounting. Okay, this is accounting. You process the payment. You paid. When you pay, you are making the payment today. Okay, you are making the payment today, but you are giving the maturity date as 10th of December. 10th December, you are writing on the check. You are printing the check. Check can be encashed 10th December. This is the date you are giving. So till you arrive this date, your system will take. It is not pending for clearing. It is pending for maturity date. That is the reason liability debit and bills payable is credit. It is pending for clearing. Once you arrive at the due date, you have to run the process. Okay, you paid, payment you processed, accounting is liability debit and bills payable is credit. No liability, you given the check with the future date. Bills payable means you given the check but with the future date. Once you arrive the date, okay, on maturity date. We'll run the process basically. Then we already arrived the maturity date what we written on the check. So system will reverse bills payable. That means it is no more pending for arriving the maturity date. So bills payable is debit. Cash clearing is credit. Okay, once you perform the reconciliation, cash clearing is debit, cash account is credit. This is how accounting takes place. So this is how accounting is different. When you make the payment, liability debit and it's pending for clearing. Here, in case of bills payables, if you make the payment with any future date, no more liability. It is not pending for clearing. It is pending for arriving the due date, means maturity date of that check. Once you arrive the maturity date of that check, we'll run this process. Update matured bills payables. Okay, status. Whenever you run this, okay. So whenever you run this process, system will update the accounting like this. It will reverse bills payables and it will credit cash clearing account. And once you do the reconciliation, cash clearing. Here, if you see expense debit, liability credit. When you make the payment, liability no, cancel. As of now, the status is we spend some expense. We given the check with the future date. That is the meaning of it. Expense debit to the bills payable credit means we paid, it is pending for arrival of maturity date. On maturity date, on 10th, we'll run this process. Then no more, it is no more pending for arriving the due date, maturity date. That is the reason bills payables will be debited. Here created will opt off and it is pending for clearing. Okay, you can submit the check in the bank, just it is pending for clearing. Once it is cleared, we show in the system as a reconciled. So no more it is pending for clearing, it is cleared, we got the cash. I mean, we got the cash means supplier will get the cash. So here liability cancelled, bills payables cancelled, cash clearing cancelled. Final entry would be expense debit, cash credit. So what stage where we are standing to represent, we are using these different accounts. Ultimately, this is the final entry, expense debit and cash credit as per this account. The general scenarios, this is the accounting. In case of bills payables, this is the accounting. So when you make the payment, system has to track bills payable account. That is the reason that account we have to provide in the common options. So that when you make the payment with the future date, it will pick that account. The rest of process also the same. When you run this maturity process, it will reverse the same bills payable account. That's how the accounting point of view, the account will be useful. So that is the reason we have to provide bills payable account in the common options. I will just go to provide this bills payable account and will create the payment method for bills payables. Then we can just proceed with the. And when we are creating the payment method for bills payables, when we are making the payment, System should force us to select the future date. That is the reason the payment method is required for bills payables. If you are using the normal payment method, it won't ask you to enter any maturity date because that is a normal payment. So system should make the field as a mandatory to enter the future date for the bills payable related scenario. That is the reason separate payment method is required. You will see that we'll create, and when we are running this process, you can understand all these points. Okay. First, let's provide one bills payable account in the common options. The nature of bills payable account is liability. You can do one thing. We have a rapid implementation sheet. There we have many accounts. What are the accounts we are using during our testing? What are the accounts we are coming across? You may just verify which account nature is what, which account is what type of account. Those we can check in the rapid implementation sheet. Now we are dealing with a bills payable account. Bills payable account nature type is liability. It's a payables only. What type of payables? Bills future dated. That's all. Okay. Now we'll go and set bills payable account in the common options. Go to common options. First we navigate to our implementation project. Task list, implementation projects, overview. Open the project. Here you can give common options. Okay, manage common options for payables and procurement. Click on this. Click on go to task icon. Here we have a concept called as field called as bills payable. Okay, if you are implementing future dated payments or say bills payables, you should provide the account here, otherwise the accounting doesn't work. Select bills payable account. Okay, select bills payable. Say OK. Say save and close. Now create payment method for bills payables. Search for payment methods. Okay, manage payment methods. Manage payment methods. Click on go to task icon. Say create. Say mix bills payable. So check only. We'll just include bills payables with this. Now we'll go to tab called as bills payables. Sorry, here provide the code also. Mix bills. Go to bills payable tab and enable bills payable. Okay, enable bills payable checkbox. It says save and close. When you enable this bills payable checkbox, system will force us to enter the future date when you are making the payment with this payment method. That's all. When you use this bills payables payment method, the maturity date field will become mandatory. That's how you will be able to process the payments with the future date. Now we'll go and create one invoice. Go to invoice workbench. Say create. Again, it will calculate withholding tax. Not required, already we tested. We'll go and disable the withholding tax applicability for that supplier. Better. Again, we don't need to calculate those. For every invoice, it will trigger the withholding tax, right? So we'll go and disable it. Search. Edit. First, you have to disable at site level. Remove this withholding tax group and disable it. Say one close. If you disable at site level, system won't calculate any withholding tax. Profile level not required. If you want to remove, you can remove. System always look for the values from the site only. If you want to remove here also, you can remove and you can disable. Submit. From now, withholding tax is not applicable for this supplier. The application we remove, right? Let's create one standard invoice. So invoices. Click on create. Supplier is a mix supplier 1. Triple G 001. Creating invoice with 50,000. Go to lines. 50,000. Go to manage installments. So if you know at the time of invoice creation itself, for this invoice you want to issue check with the future date, now itself you can set payment method as a Amex bills payable. Or else you are not aware of that now. When you are making the payment, if you take decision, payment creation time only you can select. So what are the payment method we created that you can select. If you don't select, no issues. At the time of payment, you are about to make the payment, but you want to issue the future dated payment, when future dated check. In that case, you can select during the payment creation also. If you know at the time of invoice creation as you are going to give check against this invoice with a future date, you can select it. Otherwise, ignore. Now submit this invoice for validation. It's validated. Okay, save and close. Now you can go to payment workbench. Payments. Task list. Create payment. To whom you want to make the payment. Select our bank account. Do you want to pay with a future date? The check you want to issue with a future date. So payment method you should select bills payable. Amex bills payable. Select payment process profile. We selected payment method as a bills payable. Because of this, system will enable one field as a mandatory. Let's select these details first. We selected payment method as a Amex bills payable check. At the time of this payment method creation, we enabled on checkbox. The same checkbox, it will make it as a mandatory. Go to advanced tab. Okay, here see the field is mandatory. maturity date is mandatory. Now, when you are going to make the payment to the supplier with this check number, okay, for this check, whatever system is going to print, it is not going to print this date. You already decided to give the future date. So that date you have to provide here. Go to Advanced tab. You selected this payment method. 1 second. You selected this payment method. In this payment method, we have that checkbox, bills payable checkbox. That is the reason it is adding one field called as maturity date field as a mandatory here. Now here you have to provide the date, say 20th. Yes, you are issuing the check today, but on the check you are going to print this date. Okay, this date. Now you can proceed with the rest of process. Click on add. So invoice number is this 50,000. Say apply and open. Say save and close. Check number 1008. Now we have to look at the accounting. How system will create the accounting. Without creating accounting for invoice, you cannot create accounting for payment. Okay, now whatever the payment we created, we cannot create accounting for the payment without invoice accounting. So first we will go to create the accounting for invoice, then you can create accounting for payment. This is the invoice, right? Select this, say post to ledger. So accounting is created, we know like the expense account is debit, liability account is credit. The same accounting you can see. Which expense account, what expense account you are giving that. Now system will allow us to create the accounting for this invoice related payment. Now go to payment workbench. Task list. Manage payments. Supplier. Check number is 1008. Payment number is nothing but check number. Now you submit this invoice for payment accounting. Go to actions, say post to ledger. We give a future date. Okay, you see the payment status is issued the check. Otherwise, by default, once you make the payment status would be negotiable. But here it's not negotiable, just issued. See the accounting, liability debit, and future dated payment is credit. Nothing but bills payable account. You see the account. It is taken from the common option. Right? That's what we discussed. When you make the payment, liability debit and the bills payable is credit. Say now we arrived maturity date, that is 20th. Say today is 20th. Now we have to go and run the process. Go to schedule process, tools, schedule processes. Schedule new process. So So what job you have to run? Update matured bills payable status. That is the job name. Type under use tab, it will fetch if name is matching. So the job name is update matured bills payable status. What it will do? It will update the status of matured bills payable from issued to negotiable. Now the current status of the payment is issued. Now the same it will convert from issued to negotiable. When it is negotiable, that means we arrive the due date, maturity date of the check. And accordingly, it will perform the accounting. So, okay, whenever we arrive that maturity date, we have to run this process for checks. Select our BU. So maturity date, which maturity date of the payments you want to update the status. The other information is not mandatory. Directly you can say submit. Now go to payment workbench. Find the same payment. Supplier is Amex. Check number is 1008. Search. Now you can see that payment status as a negotiable. Just wait. Now turn into negotiable. Earlier it was issued. Now again you have to submit for accounting since status is changed. Again submit post to ledger. It will add this account now. It will debit bills payables. It will credit cash clearing. View accounting. So earlier accounting was this. Liability debit and cash clearing is credit. Liability debit and future dated payments are credit. This is the previous accounting. Now the new accounting entry is bills payables, whatever liability debit and bills payables credit. This is the previous entry. That now current new entry is future dated payments. Bills payable is debited. Here it is credited, debited, and cash clearing is credited. This is the old entry. This is the new entry. What is the new entry? Bills payable debit and cash clearing is credit. Bills payable is debit, cash clearing is credit. This is the new entry. Once it is reconciled in the cash management, this is the accounting. So this is how system has to use that bills payable account in the accounting purpose. That is the reason we are inputting that account as a part of setup. So this is how you can manage the bills payables concept. Here bills payables means post dated checks, future dated payments. When you are issuing a check now, if you provide the future date, till that time how the accounting can be managed, here we are trying to understand. Only here you have to understand accounting logic. Just remember this, that's all. There is no other calculations required. So normally very general process, when you create invoice, this is accounting. When you make the payment, this is accounting. When you do reconciliation, this is accounting. In case of bills payables, this is how the accounting would be changed. Read and remember, that's all. Nothing else you have to calculate there. So that's all about bills payables concept. Fine. Now we'll see PayAlone. PayAlone. What does it mean by PayAlone? Say, now I have one supplier. Okay, I have one supplier. Sorry. PayAlone. So I have one supplier and I have to pay 10 invoices to that supplier. I can use single check for 10 invoices. Each invoice amount is 10,000. 10 invoices 1 lakh. I can pay 1 lakh with a single check. But my supplier is interested to receive the 10 checks. Okay, 10 checks. My supplier is informed. Whenever we are going to pay, we have to see how many invoices we receive from the supplier. For each invoice, you have to pay separately. That means you have to issue separate check. That's what my supplier informed to me. Okay, I can remember and I can pay today. Tomorrow, if someone else is going to make the payments to the same supplier from our organization, they may not aware of this information. Simply, for 2 invoices, they may issue 1 check. For 5 invoices, they may issue 1 check to the same supplier. So, if there is some information from the supplier, and if you are not going to set that as some process in the system, there is no guarantee that will happen. So that is the reason what we can do is in the system we can set a rule for so-and-so supplier. If you are going to make the payment, for each invoice we have to issue the separate check. That's how we set some control in the system environment, so that if any user, let any user try to make the payment to the supplier, it will allocate separate check for each invoice. That we call as PayAlone. PayAlone is nothing but paying each invoice with a separate check. For each invoice, if you are going to make the payment with a separate check, that concept we call as a PayAlone, that we have to set in the system. Okay, that we have to set in the system. So what setups we have to do? So just it's very simple. Set PayAlone and supplier site. Various levels we have, but all the levels not required. Site level is enough. After setting PayAlone, for our testing purpose, we'll go and create 2 invoices. Create 2 invoices and try to process payment so that we can understand how this will work. Okay. So the business requirement is for source to supplier, for each invoice, separate check need to be allocated. We don't want to allow to pay multiple invoices with a single check. That is the supplier requirement. Supplier is asking like that. Supplier is saying pay separately for each invoice. Don't combine more than multiple invoices to issue a single check. Okay. Take that as a business requirement. In that case, how to manage in the system, you can see with the PayAlone. So go to supplier side to set this. Go to supplier site. Suppliers. Manage suppliers. Edit. Go to sites. Edit. Fine. Here go to invoicing tab. Sorry, not invoicing. Go to payments tab. Under payments tab, go to payment attributes. Under payment attributes, again go to payment specifications. Okay. First we have to go to site. The site you have to select payments tab. Under payments you have to select payment attributes. Under payment attributes you have to select sub tab called as payment specifications. There we have one checkbox. Pay each invoice alone. enable the checkbox. So save and close. Now with this supplier site, whatever the invoices you are going to create from now, for those invoices you have to pay separately. Already the invoices, whatever you created with this site, for those invoices, this rule is not applicable. We set a rule, nothing but we enable the checkbox. Let's create two invoices. Invoices. Say create. Supplier is Amex. ANV1. Set 5,000. Go to lines. 5,000. You can notice here one point here. If you go to manage installments, system will enable PayAlone for this invoice. See here, PayAlone is enabled. How it is enabling? Site level we enable, that is defaulting for this invoice. That is same system is applied. If you disable this invoice, you can pay along with other invoice. If you by default, if you accept this invoice should be paid alone. So that is the point we have to notice. Validate it. Say save and create next. We'll create one more invoice. Okay. So amount says 6,000. Validate. Done. Now save and close. Two invoices are validated. Let's navigate to payment workbench. Go to task list. So create payment. Select supplier. Select disbursement bank account. Nothing but from which account we are making the payments. Select payment process profile. Amex. Payment document. Amex check. Now click on add. You see here, there is a column called as PayAlone. For invoice number 2222 and 7777, PayAlone is not applicable. That means before enabling the PayAlone, those two invoices are created. Now INV1 and INV2 are created after enabling. So PayAlone is yes. That means these two invoices need to be paid separately. Now I am selecting INV1. So apply. Along with that invoice, I cannot select any other invoice. It could be PayAlone enabled or without PayAlone. See, I am trying to select 2222. So apply. That INV1 should be paid alone, but I am trying to add one more invoice to that with the same document number. So apply. You cannot pay this invoice with other invoice because it is PayAlone or you already selected PayAlone invoice. Yes, in our case, already we selected PayAlone. Let's try to select INV2. Same message you'll get. You cannot pay this invoice with other invoice because it is PayAlone. Yes, it is PayAlone, or you already selected PayAlone. Yes, that is also true. Yes, and selected one also PayAlone. So this is how system will restrict. Okay, system will restrict. Say okay. Only one invoice we can pay with one document. Document number is 1009. This is check number. With this check, we can pay for only one invoice. When you set rule like this, if this is a business requirement, you can set so that system will enforce this rule in the process. Now you can say save process. This is how you can enable PayAlone and you will be able to process the payment. If you are running the PPR, payment process request, say you created 10, you enabled PayAlone, you created 20 invoices. Then in the PPR, payment process request, in the automation, system will allocate for 10 invoices, 10 checks automatically, since PayAlone is enabled. So that's how it works. So that's all about PayAlone concept. So that's all about PayAlone. I hope to understand. Now we'll see the concept called as supplier merge, and we'll wind up for today. Okay, foreign currency invoice payment we'll see tomorrow. Supplier merge. I think we have to discuss this detail later. But no issues. We'll see the tomorrow session. It'll take some time if you touch any topic here. So we're done for today. If you have any questions, you can stay back. No further discussions. Thank you all. Any questions from
Lakshman?
Hi, Lakshman. I have a question related to our previous class. So we had seen this override functionality in this while we created accounting for AP1.
Override account. Yeah, override account.
So is that functionality new to Fusion or it is available in EBS as well?
Do you know EBS?
Yes.
What do you think?
No, I did not see that, but then I never.
No, answer is
so that's right.
that is not there in EBS. It's new in the Fusion.
It's new in the Fusion.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions, please?
Lakshman, I sent an email, Bhanu Prakash.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, I'm facing some error while downloading the rapid implementation file, Lakshman.
Okay. You are.
I sent in a screenshot.
When you are downloading, you are facing that issue.
So after downloading that one, I am getting some error.
Okay. We'll check. Okay. Let me just take the questions from others. Before we wind up, I'll just check that your email and verify. Yeah.
Thanks. Okay, I'll be waiting.
Yeah, please. Yeah. Any other questions?
Hello, sir. Lakshman, sir. Good morning.
Yeah, please.